Hey, what's up, everybody? This is an open discussion with C3 Films. My name is Chris, and this is.
Cheryl.
And today we're going to be talking about the movie Hocus Pocus 2 on Disney Plus. So, we are going to be going into spoiler territory, so if you haven't seen it, make sure that you go check it out on Disney Plus and then come back and see what we have to say about it. But without further ado, let's go ahead and just jump right into this. So, Hocus Pocus 2 is a 30-year-old sequel. It's another one of those examples of a belated sequel. These movies that came out when we were children or before we were born that get a sequel 30 years later or whatnot. And there are mixed successes with movies like this. For every movie that does it well, there are at least 5 to 6 that do it poorly and don't respect the characters and make it so that you ask yourself, why was this made in the first place? Hocus Pocus 2 is not that movie. Hocus Pocus 2 is surprisingly very fun. I was shocked because when I saw the trailer for Hocus Pocus 2, I was like, this is going to be a train wreck. This is going to be awful. I cannot wait to talk so much crap about this movie. And I legitimately could not stop laughing. I had such a good time watching this film.
I mean, honestly, like in preparation for it, I watched the first movie,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, how are they gonna make a Hocus Pocus 2? Like, how is Hocus Pocus 2 going to exist? Because they wrapped it up pretty cleanly in the first one. So, I mean, it's not my favorite how they, did another one of those like reopening of a healed wound kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just ignore that little tidbit, and just the way they treated it made it better. So what I mean is that they get at least this one has like a really finite ending. Like if they make a Hocus Pocus 3, I might be a little upset because I think that they wrapped this one up even more cleanly than the first one. So
Yes.
um, I can't imagine a Hocus Pocus 3, but I agree with you. I thought this was great. There's so many things about this movie that I liked, and I'm so excited that they did justice to it. They did right by all of the original cast, and I'm sure that the reason why they even did it in the first place was because, I mean, they're like Hollywood royalty, so I'm sure they wouldn't have done it if they didn't think the script was good.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And there's a story to be told here. There is kind of like this I it's not really a Deus Ex Machina, but there so a lot of times when they have these sequels that they trying to like have a reason to exist, they add in extra information that we didn't know before, and you ask yourself, wait a second, but if this was the information you had, why didn't you do this in the previous situation? Like I think you were kind of alluding to that earlier, but like that is you let that go, that's fine. But the biggest thing about it is when you start this film, we see them as kids, and they meet a witch in the woods, and that witch gives them Book, and Book has a spell that they say you should never use. And one thing I do like is that you don't know it in that moment, but after you see the rest of the film, there's this implication that you only understand after you see the result of what happens when you cast that spell. Because when they meet the witch in the woods, they ask her, "Where is your coven?" And she says hesitantly that they're all gone. And in that moment, you think that they were just killed by villagers. But after you see what the book cost, there is this there it is implied that she used the spell so she knew what what would happen, which is one why she had no problem parting with Book in the first place because she didn't need Book anymore, and two, she's that's why she's alone, and it also seems like she's still alive. Like we never get a finite answer that she's alive, but we constantly see a bird flying around in the movie, including at the end, which we assume could be her, still just kind of like living in the woods and stuff like that, being alone. So the story the story still has that element of the story is a nice way of like having an overarching kind of like arc for the characters to have to go through by the end, but from looking at it from a standpoint of as a sequel that is attached to a original within that world, it feels like the Sanderson sisters might have wanted to cast that spell in the first movie when they were about to die before the sun came up.
Yeah, yeah, it's like it's definitely added on, like, and that's definitely another one of those things that you just have to like kind of get past because they never intended to make a sequel, and considering the the rules that were defined in the first movie, I feel like they did a fairly good job reviving it. And they I think they did a good job because they hid behind it well. Like they put in exactly the right amount of stuff that was needed for the upgrade. So like you have this origin story, and then you have these three kid versions of these memorable characters, Sanderson sisters, and they got it exactly right.
The
Like
kids
those,
did a really good job.
yeah, it
I
was
was really
exactly
surprised.
yeah. And then they bring back Billy Butcherson, and like that, you know, whole history between uh, Winnie and Sarah and Billy is a little bit fuzzy, and I didn't really think I feel like they expanded on it, but it wasn't really implied that way in the first movie, because in the first movie it did seem very much like like they did have a relationship, and he did cheat with Sarah, but in this one it was like all in Winnie's head that there was never a relationship. It was only one kiss, and she's like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But it works, and they made it part of the story, and so they were able to bring him back in that sense, because they gave him a reason to be back. And it was also another nod. There's a lot of nods to the first movie, um, and I feel like I don't know. There's a couple weird ones, like the devil, the guy in the devil
Mm-hmm.
costume,
In the first movie.
and yeah, from the first movie, and then
Mm-hmm.
and the wife with the curlers, and there's like a couple in the at the fair that were dressed up as them, and then we also see someone watching Hocus Pocus 1 on TV. So I'm like, that doesn't really make sense in the universe of
Right.
this. So that bugged me a little bit. I was like, this is the wrong kind of nod to Hocus Pocus 1,
Mm-hmm.
but thanks for trying. It was still kind of fun to see it, I guess, but it wasn't necessary. But
Yeah.
there's little stuff like that.
No, I see what you're saying there. And I feel like there was like these moments where I wasn't sure if I was gonna like the movie. I kind of felt like I was in a tug of war where like there would be things that I liked, and then someone would say something, and I'd be like, I don't know how I feel about that. And then I'd see something else I like, and then I'd be like, I don't know how I feel about that. I was really, but then by the end, the movie won me over because of a couple of things. Like I think the characters, the Sanderson sisters, it's obviously their story, but the juxtaposition with the characters, the young cast that we had for the leads in this movie, I thought was like nice. I overall liked those girls. I thought that they were cool. I was afraid that all of the other characters like that girl's boyfriend or the mayor, I was afraid that they were all going to be jerks or just completely dumb, but they ended up being kind of endearing, and the mayor actually surprised me because I figured that he was going to be this kind of pretend good guy, but at the end it was going to be revealed that he was the real evil all along. And I assumed that the stupid boyfriend was going to be, seen as good by the end and help them out and not be all bad because he came across like a kind of unknowing bully. But they didn't go that way with the mayor, and I was very happy to see that. And actually he kind of gets taken out of the movie near the like right before, like, I guess the act 3 or whatever, because he gets home and then he's just like, I'm not dealing with this, and then they steal his daughter instead. But I really felt for that character because all he wanted was an apple. He wanted his caramelized apple, and I was just like, I want you to have this because you want it so badly, and everything is getting in your way. And then he doesn't get the apple, and I was very sad, and that's the worst part of the movie for me. That man should have got his apple.
That's true. They never like give it back to him at the end. He gets like this like subpar version of what he
From
actually
Walgreens.
wanted.
From
The
Walgreens.
apothecary.
Travesty. Oh, I'm so upset for that man. But that's what I'm saying. Like the movie had a good way of getting me to care about these characters, and even the message that they have at the end and the send off that they give for the Sanderson sisters feels earned, and it feels like it works within the world, and it makes it so that, like you said, we shouldn't see a Hocus Pocus 3 because you guys did a good job of making it so that we never have to.
Yeah, I mean, not that I don't want to, because like they made a really good first movie and then they made a really good second movie, considering that it was never planned. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that ending for the sisters, I feel like it was so much better than the first one. It
Mm-hmm.
really gave them like a good bow out, because like in the first movie they were the villains, and so they had to meet like a bad demise and everything because they needed to be punished. But then
They
this
also killed a little
movie,
girl at the beginning of the film.
that's true, yeah. I mean, they were the true villains of the movie, but in the second movie they become victims, and that's
Mm-hmm.
established at the very very beginning, and then they become this like misunderstood group, but they're still the villains of the movie. It just so happens that like it they turn it around for themselves at the end, because I mean, yes, they're like still meaning a demise, but they're doing it graciously, and they're doing it in a way that means something more than like, oh, the villains are being defeated.
It also implies that they will still be able to be together because they use the words that it doesn't bring them back, but it sends you to them. So there's this implication that on the other side they're still together, which is what you want for those characters once you realize when you realize just how much they care about each other as a family. And that's what the opening of the movie is for as well, to show that even though Winnie can kind of berate her sisters, she loves them and they love her. Even when they have these moments, like Sarah has this moment where she gets power and she shoots Winnie for a second. It's just like, haha, I am not a fool. And you're just like, yeah, you go, Sarah. And then Winnie says, just go and get them. And Sarah just bows and says, yes, I'm so sorry, sister. Let's go. And you're like, oh, okay. So, and I like that. I was like, okay, they didn't do the thing where I thought they were going to do, where they were just going to end up fighting each other until like the end of the movie. And that was how it was going to be concluding. It was just a brief moment of, hey, don't say that about me, but okay, I'll still go and do what you tell me to do. So, like, their relationship is very much well established and very much built upon in this film, and the implication that they are together in the end, which is what's most important, and you get that from Winnie when they disappear, that leaves a feeling of this feels good. And that's like one of, I think, like the best things I can say about this movie is that by the end you feel good.
Yeah, I mean, I was holding back tears a little bit there because I was like, oh, that's so sad. Like, she got, all this power and stuff, but what good is this power without the people that I love?
Right. I mean, they even developed Book as a character because Book the entire time is trying to get them not to do the spell, and you're just like, why don't you let them do the spell? Like Book is just saying, no, don't do it, don't do it. Does you think he's just being an arrogant or rambunctious Book? But he's actually doing it to protect them because he knows what it's gonna cost. And when it's done, like Book is just like, man, I've never here's a statement you're never going to hear again. I never thought I would see such an emotive Book. That Book could tell you so much with just one eye. That Book has one eye, and I could tell every emotion that was going through that Book's skull or Book's pages.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, I almost forgot about that. Like how much more character they gave Book this time, and it did feel a little bit different because I was like, oh, this is not how Book really was in the first
Was,
movie.
yeah.
But if you think about it, like, Book was kind of like that. Like, it was loyal to Winnie. And like, it did open up and give her spells. Like, that's the very at the beginning of the first movie. Book opens up and gives her the spell for the black candle to keep them alive so that they can come back in the future. So And then also the beacon. So Book
Mm-hmm.
does have a personality. It's just not as um, you know dominant in the first movie as the second movie. But I think it's also kind of like a technology thing. Like we have the technology
To move Book around
to
more.
yeah to give Book more character than before. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
will say I did have a moment where I asked myself, I was just like, with them, because I noticed what you were saying too, where I was just like, this isn't how Book was in the first movie. Am I having a Thor Love and Thunder moment right now with how they did Mjolnir and like Stormbringer or whatever? And I was just like, I don't know how I'm gonna feel about this. That was one of those moments where I was getting pulled the other way, where I was like, I'm not sure if I'm gonna like this movie. But because they handled it well, it's not like Book is only like becoming aware for comedy purposes. There's actually an emotional undertone to all the actions that Book is taking. And so at the end, when the Sanderson sisters are gone and Book sheds a tear, that moment is earned because you do get that feeling up until that point that Book was trying to protect these sisters and that Book actually did love these sisters and will be sad to see them go. So because it was, even though Book is more emotive than Book was in the first film, it doesn't feel as jarring because of the fact that there's an emotional beat to it that is paid off by the end of the film.
And it makes sense. Like at first, I thought Book was doing that because I thought maybe Winnie would have to give up Book,
Mm.
but then it makes more sense. Like after watching it to the end, I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, it does make more sense that it's the sisters, and they did set it up for that. But yeah, and I think how I feel about the new characters, like oh, maybe there will be a Hocus Pocus 3 because we have, I guess, one new witch, but technically three, and that there are these three new, sisters that are not really sisters, but
Mm-hmm.
have a friendship as deep and connected as the Sanderson sisters. I don't know if they did that because they want to try to see if they can make a continuation or a series or something with the three girls, um, which I don't know if I would entirely mind because it's not for our generation or it won't be for our generation.
That's fair.
Yeah, and I kind of like the idea that we have these three girls instead of a teenage boy and a love interest.
Oh,
So
from the first movie, yeah.
yeah, so I like how they changed that up as well. Um, but it could just very well be that they had these three girls as a comparison or something to
Mm-hmm.
juxtapose against the Sanderson sisters. So we'll
Yeah,
see.
and I think that they really worked in that regard. One thing I want to talk about, we got to talk about Gilbert. We got to talk about Gilbert because this man, oh my gosh. See, he was one of those characters also. I was just like, I don't like if all of the specific gendered characters that are a part of this gender are all like dumb or terrible people, I'm gonna be upset by the end of this movie. But Gilbert actually ended up being okay. Gilbert was fine, but Gilbert is still he is a problem. Um, so we know that in the movie he tricks this teenage girl into lighting this candle, which leads to a funny joke later where he says, well, it would have worked for me, and they're like, why? And he gives them a look, and the girl says, ew, and he's looking at them like, why are you saying ew? Because for her, she's thinking he's saying because I'm not a virgin, but really he's trying to say because I'm not a 16-year-old girl. So, but it's just that was one of those like nice little like adult jokes that isn't expressly said but is implied, and I thought that that was kind of like moments like that also lend well to this film. But Gilbert as a character is he's interesting because so he tricks them to bring in the Sanderson sisters back, which is objectively a bad thing based on the knowledge of what they've done in the past. But he says it from a naive, I guess, or kind of like optimistic kind of way because he says like they were misunderstood, but he still did something bad for something that he believed was good. He didn't like let the person know. He still tricked this teenage girl into doing this. And at that point, I felt like he is a villain, and so it took. And then obviously he gets cursed, and then he has to get all these things. But when he works with Billy, he lies to Billy about why he's doing it. So once again, I'm even thinking more like he's a villain because he's self-serving in this way. He's not like, "Hey, I need this to survive." He's like, "Hey, this is going to be so we can kill them, which is something that you want, right?" And so that character, I don't know if that character ever really redeemed himself in my eyes by the end. Like he shows up to try to help, but he doesn't actually contribute to anything. So I don't. I maybe I'm not remembering. Maybe you can tell me, but I don't think there's a real moment of like redemption, a redemptive moment for that character. So like at the end of that film, I think he's the only character I didn't feel completely okay with.
Yeah, I actually forgot about Gilbert, to be honest, because
We don't talk about Gilbert.
yeah, yeah, wrong movie. But the thing that like made me kind of question his decisions was like he gave the girls those leaves like the angelic leaves so that they can lift a curse, which they did. And if he knows about it, why didn't he use that on himself?
Oh my god! So the movie can happen.
Yeah, exactly. So, but you're right. I found his decisions distasteful. I think it would have been a much better story if he tried to, you know, get like get Billy to help him because he like instead of like lying to him, just say and this is what I thought he was gonna do is say like if I don't do this I'm gonna die, and then Billy helps him. I would have
Mhm.
much rather seen it that way. I
Yeah,
think it would have made him a more likable character.
yeah, I agree. Because at this point in the film, he's just self-serving, so it's hard to care about him at all. Which is saying something when, like I said, the three main villains of the film killed a girl in the film before this, and we care more about them than this guy that they threatened. So
Yeah, well, they don't kill anyone in this movie, I think so.
no, they don't. They don't kill anyone in this movie. But they're one of the things that surprised me was how often they talked about death and killing and stuff in this film. They do say, "Hey, we're gonna kill this girl," or "Hey, we want to eat the souls of these children." Blah blah blah. Die this, death that, kill this. One of the songs is literally like, "You're gonna die." Like in the song, that's one of the lyrics. So like I might be out of touch with what is okay for like I guess children's programming, but a lot of times when I would see children's programming nowadays, they stay away from words like that. They use words like destroy or defeat or things like that. So for them to use such, I guess, more definitive terms in this movie made it also feel like even though I knew it was a kids movie, it didn't feel as kiddie to me because we're still dealing with concepts like, hey, guess what? When this sand runs out, you're gonna die, and I can get behind. Okay, I don't want to die. Oh, I mean, I don't like you, this character, but I know I don't want to die, so I can see why you're at least like you have to do this and try to figure out a way to get out of this because these people are going to be okay with killing you in the end of this movie.
I mean, I think there's a little bit of a. It's more for our generation than kids
That's
now,
true. That's true.
and also, I think there's because when I watched, I just remember when I watched Hocus Pocus when I was a kid, I thought it was scary.
Yeah, I did too. I did
So
too.
yeah, so like having this be at that level, I feel like it's kind of matched. So like
Hmm.
if kids are watching it, I feel like they would feel that same fear that we felt when we were kids watching the first one. So I feel like it's right.
Hmm.
I don't think it's a taboo or like daring for Disney to like throw words like that into this kind of movie because it's kind of a more of an um, adult kid movie, I guess. So because that's how I feel about the first Hocus Pocus. Like that's something that like I was not supposed to watch by myself as a kid because it's too scary. And I feel the same way about the second one. I think it's the same level, so
I agree, and I think that's partially why like it was easy to get into and watch. Like we've watched other things that we were able to recognize and say, it's it's not necessarily for us, but we can still understand the appeal. But this one it was kind of like it was a mixture of I could see how this could be for kids, but at the same time I'm enjoying myself as an adult that also was a kid when I saw the original. Um, I was happy that Thackeray got a call out, but I was also happy that they did not bring Thackeray back because
yes.
it would not have made sense. I was like, I'm
Yes.
pretty sure I did not watch the film before this, but I've seen Hocus Pocus this year actually because I watched it on a whim earlier in the year because I liked that movie, and I was like, I feel like I remember Thackeray basically becoming a spirit and going back to the other side with his sister. So I don't bring Thackeray back, and they didn't. They brought back Billy because it made sense, but Thackeray, Binks, and any of the previous characters they were left alone. So I was okay with that. I thought that was a good choice.
I thought maybe they might give like Emily. Is it was it Emily? The little
Can't remember
sister.
her name. Yeah, because she'd be our age now, right?
Yeah, I thought they would might give her like a cameo, like maybe she's one of the teachers or something like that. I thought that would have
Mm,
been cool, but they didn't bring any of the kids
two
back.
kids. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's okay. It's the I wouldn't have want to. I wouldn't have want to see a whole bunch of them, but I thought a cameo would have been cool. Um, but I just want to bring up like the little jokes really quick because I feel like
Mm.
the little jokes really made it for me. That's like the stuff with like the filters on the camera when they're like, "Oh yeah, you can
Oh
buy the
yeah.
potions now," and then they go to Walgreens, and then there's like, I'm never gonna see those automatic doors the same ever again.
They're opening because you're a powerful witch.
Yes. But I thought like the photo when they took a selfie with like
Yes, with that.
first of all I love how they just went with it. They're like, oh, we're taking a photo as if they knew what a photo was,
And like they're like, "What is this? A photo?" And then they
and then
immediately pose
they
for it.
pose and they're like, oh my god, we look so beautiful. And it's like the most filtered filter ever. Um, and then of course they have the iconic flying on a broomstick scene where in the original it was when he got a broom, Sarah got a mop, and then
Vacuum cleaner.
Mary got a vacuum cleaner, and then it got updated where Winnie still has a broom because of course she's like
The
the
leader.
the leader, and then Sarah gets a jet Swiffer mop, which
Hmm.
I love, and then Mary gets Roombas
Roomba.
that actually play a part later. So I thought
Yep.
that was really clever, and I like that. I was like, I like this upgrade here.
I
It's clever.
I thought the Roombas were gonna piss me off, but then I was like, "Oh, these Roombas are like characters of their own." So I love it. And then the moment they show up when they're surrounded by salt, I was just like, that's a payoff moment right there. Okay, this is good, and they get freed because of these Roombas. So once again, like we always talk about this, but like movies that leave you feeling good are movies that reward you for your time investment or reward you for little things that you see in them, things that come back and mean something later when they feel innocuous, like these Roombas. That's such a small moment, but that moment when they arrive and you realize what's going to happen, it feels good, and you're like, oh, okay, that's cool. Is it maybe a little dumb? Sure, but just go with it. It's fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's that kind of movie, so they get to do stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, what did you have any other little jokes you want to bring back up?
Eight Legs of Sin.
Which oh
That's
yes,
what I'm gonna call spiders from now on.
Lexus.
Eight Legs of Sin.
Oh, it's so good. The last thing that I personally want to bring up is that we can't talk about Hocus Pocus 2 without talking about the musical number. And this movie had two. The original had one musical number, the Spell on You song, like their version of the Spell on You. And this one had their version. Well, they had I think one original song, which was "The Witches Are Back." I think that's an original song that they did when they first like came back, and it's a number that they play again at the during the credits of the film. And the film that takes place or excuse me, the song that takes place as far as in the movie, and like kind of like their shout out to like what happened in the original film when they were at the ball and they used their song to entrance everybody and get them to do what they wanted. They did this at the fair, and this time it was their rendition of, I forget what the name of the song. It's like I'm gonna get you or something.
Like one
Um,
way or another.
one way or another. Yeah, it's their version of that song. Um, I don't think their version of this song was better than their version of A Spell on You. I don't think it's as memorable, but I will never get tired of how they mix in the spell incantations into the song lyrics because that's really cool. But I still think that the Spell on You version is a stronger piece that's more memorable because even to this day, I remember the Pocus version of that song more than the actual song itself.
Yeah, same. And I think like it was probably like a huge hit too. Like I don't actually know the stats and stuff, but I'm fairly certain that they got a lot of hits and stuff. And even like you know how like Christmas music has all these like different covers and stuff from different people that are like super famous, and there's all these different versions of the same songs
Mariah Carey
that
has a
we
lot of
always
those.
hear. Yeah.
Yeah.
I Put a Spell on You by the Sanderson sisters. That's definitely in the Halloween mix. Like you hear that with like the Haunted Mansion song from The Ride and like all the other. I mean, there's not a lot of Halloween songs, so that's definitely one of the standouts for like the Halloween song season.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. What about you? What did you think about this the song that they did one way or another? What did you think about that?
It was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Exactly. Right.
I was like, I wish they would have just done an original song
Original. That's what I
instead.
thought too. Because
Yeah.
I love what they did. Yeah. But then I reminded myself, well, they technically did a remix in the past, so I guess they would do a remix now. We don't ask ourselves how they know modern day music, but whatever. We didn't ask
I even
before.
feel like I would have been happy if they did I Put a Spell on You again. Because then that would have been like, oh yes, here we go. We get to like one, we get to hear it again, and two, like it's the same spell.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. It would make sense. So, yeah. So it sounds like we both had the same thought about the song. It was there. It was a nice callback, but that was one of those cases where you're not gonna outdo the original because the original is just so timeless. But yeah, we're running up on time. Is there anything else that you wanted to say real quick for our YouTube segment?
Nope, that's it for me.
Okay. And if you guys want to check out this and more, where we talk about like all sorts of things on our Twitch channel, you can check us out on twitch.tv/films. It'd be great to see you guys over there. But what did you guys think about Hocus Pocus 2? Have you seen it? Did you like it? Did you think that it was a good continuation of a 30-year-old story? Did you enjoy seeing the Sanderson sisters? Did you think that their send off was perfect? Are you interested in seeing a Hocus Pocus 3? What have you thought about it? Comment below. Let us know. And right down there, if you give us a like, share, and subscribe. Even if you don't, though, I have been Chris, and this has been
Cheryl, and we'll see you all next time.